In the last class, we have learnt about chronology as well as we learnt about how do we periodize. See, in how do we periodize, especially we mainly learnt about whom? About James Mill. As I told you that James Mill, he was a Scottish economist as well as a political philosopher. He divided the Indian history into three volumes or into three parts, that too on the basis of religion. When he had written this in 1817, he divided the Indian history into British Indian history into three parts. Which are those three? Hindu, Muslim and British. Which means he divided the history on the basis of religion. But is it right to divide a history of a country on the basis of religion? Obviously it is incorrect, right? How James Mill had divided, in the same way other historians also divided the history of India on other basis, not on the basis of religion. They divided the history of India on other basis. I mean, especially they divided on the basis of the particular years or particular periods. So, which are those three periods then? The other historians have divided the Indian history. Other historians have divided the Indian history into three periods. Those are ancient, medieval and modern. Those are ancient, medieval and modern. But this too has problem. This too has problem. Then what was that problem? First one, see, dividing the history into ancient, medieval and modern, it was borrowed from the West. I mean, it is copied. This type division of history was copied or borrowed from the West. I mean Europe. It was borrowed. This is the first problem we can find here. And then important point after this, see, as it was brought from the West, in West what happens? See, in West, see, modern period was related with the growth of all the forces, of modernity. Modern period related to the modernity. I mean, modernization was done when? In the modern period. What modernization? See, all the new areas were developed. Changes took place, growth took place, progress took place in the modern period. That's what it is called modernity, especially in the field of science. In the field of science, in the field of reason, as well as democracy emerged, freedom emerged, equality emerged. When? In the modern period. That's why it is called as modernity or modern history. But in India, it is completely different. And medieval period, if we take medieval period, see, medieval period means what? The period in which the features of modern period did not exist. The period in which the features of modern period did not exist, that period was called as medieval period. I mean, science did not exist, reasoning did not exist, no idea of democracy, no idea of equality or no idea of liberty or freedom. That is what called medieval period. See, in India what happens now? In India, under the rule of British, people did not have equality. There was no independence to us, as well as no equality, no freedom or liberty to Indians under the British rule. And there was no economic growth also in India, as well as there was no progress also in India under the British rule. Then how can we call it as the modern period? How can we call it as modern period? Obviously it is wrong. Because of this, many historians referred the period of British ruling, the period which was the British rule in India. I mean, the British ruling period in India was called as the colonial period. It was called the British ruling period in India. It was called as the colonial period. What it was called? The colonial period. Why historians call the British ruling period in India as colonial period? Because, see, what is the meaning of colony or colonial? See, colonial means the subjugation of one country by another country. the subjugation of one country by another leads to changes in politics, economy, culture, as well as in society. That is what called as colonial. For example, India was a colony of British. Why? Because British conquered, British captured, British subjugated our country, India. That's why India was a colony of the British. So, the colonial period means the period of the British rule in India was called as colonial period by the historians. It was not called as the period of modernity. It was not called as modern history, modern period. So, this is all about how do we periodize, why it is important to periodize the history. And in the next class, we will learn sources used to write Indian history. Sources used to write Indian history from the 250 years, from the last 215 years. What are the sources? What are the things? Evidences used to write the Indian history from the last 250 years. About this point, we will learn in the next class. Thank you. Jai Hind.